Hello again, welcome back to NDI Central Live, where, yes, we're talking everything NDI here at NAB 2018. We're webcasting live from the NewTek booth from the South Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center. So if you're coming down to NAB, make sure you stop by and say hello to us. And while you're here, make sure you visit the NDI Central Pavilion. We have 14 different exhibitors over there displaying all kinds of great NDI products. Well, right now, we have Mr. Will Waters, NewTek's Director of IP Strategy. What does that mean?
Thanks, Rex. Glad to be here. You know, as we're in a transition to IP within the industry, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. It's more than just moving video signals from one cable to another. It's about telling stories. It's about getting knowledge out and creating, helping people create content, new ways of storytelling, and really taking advantage of the flexibility that networks give and interconnectivity. So it's really, I work with everyone at NewTek to really develop strategies as we put products out to the marketplace to let storytellers do their thing.
That's great. Well, we've, you know, NDI has been out in the market now for a couple years. Mm-hmm. And as we've been talking to the different developers and different users here, it's being very well accepted. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with it.
That's absolutely correct. You know, coming into the show here at NAB, I was doing a lot of research and, you know, kind of looking at industry trends and industry insiders talking about different things. And, you know, the consensus definitely was on this. The move to IP, I think, is pretty much an accepted thing. Now, how we get there and what we use, you know, fortunately, I think we've settled on to just a few different protocols, if you will, as far as what people are looking at, depending on their requirements in their facility, whether they're independent or whether they're, you know, an enterprise level media provider. So one of the things that you know, the NewTek is doing, and part of that strategy is that while we do have NDI, it's the leadership in IP in that transition. So the network and the storytelling on the networks is what we can take advantage of, and that's one of the reasons why we've been working actually with the other IP standards or the SMPTE bodies to be able to really bring that to a reality.
Mm-hmm. Now, when someone is making the move to IP, do they have to be concerned with getting stuck with a standard that may go away?
You know, that's been a really important conversation piece and an important concern, you know, as we've been moving and having this conversation over the years. But really, that's less of a concern today than it ever has been, for two reasons. One is that SMPTE has worked out a standard for that they call 2110. It's a whole body of standards, and that brings really every level or the high level of video transport into the IP space. And NewTek has been right there, and we announced a product last year. We actually have it working and operating at the IP showcase right here on the show floor that allows for anybody that's been working with NDI to have access to a SMPTE 2110 infrastructure or vice versa. And the important thing here is that that has really been for facilities and infrastructure at the broadcast level, but NDI has taken that leadership position on any type of software-driven, software-based product and given access on standard networks. So really now, depending on if you want high bandwidth, very specific requirements, or you need to have access at pretty much every facility or every access, you have your choice of whatever that IP standard would be, and there is no lock-in, there's no gate that's going to keep you or be a concern that you're not going to be able to interoperate there.
And that's really the difference between kind of the old way of considering standards and the current landscape, is that they can coexist.
That's absolutely true. You know, when we're dealing with an SDI cable, it's that linear transfer, and it's there's a lot of physical requirements that go into that. Physical properties, such as how the cable is made, and I mean, getting in all the details, but it can only go to a certain amount or certain resolution, a certain frame rate. Otherwise, you have to rip out all of that and replace that when you have a standards change. Now with IP, we can actually operate multiple standards, pick the best tool for the job at hand, but be able to use that general purpose infrastructure, that IP network, the same switches, the same cabling that actually you're running your business operations on. So now you can really take advantage of that. But to be honest, Rex, it's not just about the nuances of the technical part. It's about doing storytelling. You know, one of the things that I know you and I have talked about, and we've had different conversations about, is that our storytelling is impacted by actually how you set up where the camera can go, how far that can be from the switcher, and where the graphics guy is, and all of those things. Like, there is a way we tell a story because we've had that limitation.
The limitation of the physical environment that
Yes,
you're having.
yes. Now that you really have all of it interconnected via the network, whole new ways of telling a story. It's more sources you can bring in. It's other people that can produce. You can insert data and information. I mean, this is the great world we live in.
Yesterday we had HubSpot here, and they've developed a system that allows them to access cameras all over the world and bring them back to a central location to produce it. So now, you know, the whole idea of producing a live event, which is to roll out a fly pack or roll out a truck to some location and set everything up there, send out one signal. Now we're looking at bring your cameras out, send them all back to your control room, wherever that may be, and produce your show. So it's really shifting and adding more tools to the storytelling.
Well, one of the things that I look at, it's shifting, and it's really, I see it, it's not just about technology that's driving this, it's about the viewer as well. You know, we all are now used to this curated content that we have, you know, whether that's what we're watching on YouTube or something that Hulu is presenting to us,
or
the news as it brings in, and it's not just the channel, but it's your preferred supplier of that. Well, that means there's more content that's required, right? And you need that in more places because we're all moving around and we're all at different locations, and you need that to really be on demand. So having live, it really, what's kind of impressive about it is it almost starts changing that definition of what is live, because more content, more places on viewer demand, being able to do that, and of course not break the bank, it provides more opportunities for people to be involved in video storytelling, and that all happens on that IP network.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the latest technologies, some of the additions to NDI 3.5 that have kind of opened up some of the capabilities. For instance, on the technical side of things, 3.5 makes it easier for devices to find one another on the network, I understand. Is that how
well, that's one of the things that we've been looking at. You know, what NewTek strives to do is really make things as intuitive as possible. I mean, we are talking in some cases very complex things that are happening under the hood, but we do want to have that auto discovery and registration of enabled devices, and we continue to promote that and develop that as we get feedback and see how people are utilizing NDI. And that's one of the benefits, because it's a software-driven protocol. We can have those updates and really bring that speed of innovation. So we have an ability to have better discovery and registration. We've also changed the transport mechanism to be able to take advantage of what we call UDP and forward error correction for better stability, better reach into more complex networking environments, some different things like that. Of course, that's all backwards compatible with previous versions of NDI. So the interface now actually negotiates and says, hey, what's your capabilities, and then picks the best method of transport across the network.
I see. You know, one thing we keep telling people is to try it. Try it out, and they can easily do that with our NDI Tools. That is a free package of tools available at NewTek.com, but there have been some improvements to that as well.
There's been vast improvements there. So, of course, we have that NDI SDK for developers, and that's freely available. But what a lot of people, just from an end user standpoint, like people who are not doing code and development, there's a whole tools pack that have some very powerful features, such as being able to see any NDI source with Studio Monitor, or be able to send NDI source with the open source VLC player. So you can really get started and work with that at any time. But as part of this latest development with NDI 3.5, we have some features within Studio Monitor that allow for a web server application so that you can do remote control. What's great about this is I can then take my phone and then change what source is feeding Studio Monitor. So there's some great applications for monitoring in your production, or be able to send something to the remote feed out in the studio, or even something that's a confidence monitor out outside of the production and different things. So again, it's expanding on the network, taking advantage of the capabilities and the flexibility there.
So that's really going to have an impact on display systems, accessibility for
display systems, multi-viewers. You could have multiple versions running, all with a different NDI source, so you can utilize, again, moving to standard computing devices and hardware, but have all this in software where you can set up really custom application, if you will, or custom use application, a custom setup, utilizing that application so that you can meet the needs of your production. It gives you confidence as a producer. It gives you confidence even as talent on stage to be able to see those sources wherever they're coming from.
How have you seen some of the users implementing NDI? I mean, in the time that we've released it to the world a couple years ago to now, how have you seen the landscape of video production change?
Well, I've seen changes both in professional high-end production as well as the independent. One of the biggest changes is in game streaming, independent game streamers. With NDI, as with some of the products that you have there, they can go directly into very popular streaming applications for like OBS or XSplit, and then take an NDI feed directly from the game. So as part of the new tools, there's also what we call Scan Converter Pro. And this is something I think will be very interesting to just independent streamers, because now we have taken the encoding and put it into the GPU, which allows us to send really, like say, game streaming frames directly across the network to a streaming platform like OBS. But there's something that we've enhanced there as well, and that is that you can also now send 2 streams from Scan Converter. So say you have a webcam that's set up as well as your own microphone. That you might want as a separate channel into something like OBS. This is all part of this new tools pack. So what it does is it helps to get new streamers on board and eliminate some of the complexity of hardware devices, and does this work with this, and oh, I didn't have this cable connected right, or this application's using my capture card. You know, trying to just make that all simple because it's already connected via the network.
Why is it important that NewTek is software driven?
It's important because the world that we operate in today is all about interconnectivity. Whether you're on your phone or your computer or your TV or all the devices that we're working with, it's through software that we have that connectivity, and it's kind of creating that background around that. So what software allows us to do at NewTek is to develop a ecosystem and develop products that really break down the barriers of cost and barriers of complexity, so that people who have a story can tell that story and get that out to people who'd be interested in it. And we can do that at a very fast rate. You know, Dr. Cross, I think who was on the show earlier this week, he was talking to many of us at an event earlier in the week, and he talked about, we have always looked at NewTek at the future of video being on computers, being on software, and of course being on networks, and that's a realization that we have the benefit of seeing today.
Well, lots to absorb and a lot to take in, but thanks for taking some time out to be on the show.
It's my pleasure.
And Will Waters, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here. What's your next move? Are you back to the IP
next over to the IP showcase? We're talking about virtualization of systems up in the Cisco booth. We have interfaces at VizRT with more graphic systems and production automation. It's all software that connects all this together.
Great. Thanks again, Will. All right, well, stick around, everyone, because we'll be back shortly with yet another fantastic interview. Stick around.